Into it today. Washington, D.C. finds itself at the centre of history as Donald Trump is sworn in, marking a triumphant return to the presidency. After a turbulent political journey, his comeback is now more than just a personal victory. It's also a signal to millions of Americans who feel overlooked by the establishment. His arrival in Washington was met with grandeur, featuring a spectacular fireworks display at Trump National Golf Club, his own golf club, proving once again that Trump knows just how to make an entrance. The celebrations for the inauguration now begin. The political left is now asking what happens next. The Trumps bracing their return to the White House with private receptions and festivities, but the challenges ahead are enormous, from domestic policies to international diplomacy, and his bold plan with Elon Musk to completely change the way the government operates. And don't forget, this 4 years won't be like the last 4 years in Washington, because he doesn't have to worry about re-election this time around. This is his one last shot at changing America. Some say one last shot for the world to change as well when it comes to politics. Ash, what's your thoughts?
Well, who ever thought that we would be here after all that has happened over the past 4 years? We are now reaching a stage where we have the end of Biden, and I think that's something that we could be quite relieved about, because it's been quite clear that Joe's not really been quite with it for some time. And all of the legal actions, the prosecutions that were taken against Trump as well, it's somewhat incredible that quagmire of legal actions are now ancient history.
Yes, it's interesting watching this footage of Trump going up the stairs there on Air Force Two, which is the presidential plane lended by the current president, so that Melania and Trump and Barron there, speaking of a dynasty, can make their way to Washington. You and I remember watching as Trump left Washington for the final time on Air Force One to the Frank Sinatra's My Way, perfectly timed. He loves a show, he loves television, turns around for his wave there, of course. A pretty big event there in Washington as well. Just on the Joe Biden point that you mentioned, want to play this of him speaking about the Israel hostages.
I've worked in foreign policy for decades, and this is one of the toughest negotiations I've been part of. Many of you who followed these negotiations will attest that the road to this deal has been not easy at all, and a long road. But we've reached this point today because of the pressure Israel built on Hamas, backed by the United States. Some said my policy of a firm support for Israel was relentlessly pursuing diplomacy, risked drawing America into a wider war in the region. I listened to those voices, many of whom I respected a great deal, but I concluded abandoning the course I was on would not have led us to the ceasefire we're seeing today. But instead, it would have risked a wider war in the region that so many feared.
All right, so Joe Biden speaking there, and obviously sounds a bit like he's trailing off. Sounds like if you were to say, read 10,000 words, the last maybe 500 words, you'd start to sound a bit like you were over it. It's hard to imagine had he have carried on for another 4 years.
I don't think it could have lasted.
But he believes he could have. He still says that.
Of course. I guess that is that's probably the first sign of not really being with it, is the delusion of it. And I'm just relieved that this period is now at an end, because what would have happened if suddenly the president had to be woken up at 3 in the middle of the night, being told that you might need to consider pressing the red button here. I just don't think that he would have been capable of making such a decision. So say what you like about Donald Trump. I know that people love him, people hate him, but I think despite his age, he is still with it.
Yes, it is interesting how the world works. Sometimes history does get things right. Biden, the 4 years, really gave Trump a chance to look back at the first 4 years, which frankly was chaotic. You think about the Time magazine cover when Biden took over, which was everything in the Oval Office was absolute chaos. Trump says that is because when he'd never been to Washington really before he became the president. He didn't know anyone, and he took on board in his first presidency a whole bunch of Republicans who weren't MAGA Republicans, who then were leaking against him because they didn't like his form of management. The past 4 years for Trump now seems to have been an opportunity for him to stop, reflect, choose, Do you think he'll get it right this time? He's got Susie Wilkes, who, by all accounts, is running the show as Chief of Staff. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, he does seem to have a stronger team around him these days. There was, as you say, a lot of chaos during the fourth term. We remember the articles, we remember the books, Fire and Fury, and publications like that. You know, we can only, I guess, for the sake of the world, hope that that his staffing situation is going to be a lot more stable this time. But that said, when the Don is in the thick of it, is he going to be able to, I guess, maintain the line himself? That is a big unknown. It's probably something that hasn't really been thought about too much as yet, but we'll certainly hear about it, pretty soon.
Well, there's a lot of pressure on him, right? This is the last 4 years, a chance to redo his legacy. But as we know with Richard Nixon, it doesn't always work out the second term, despite having an historic election. I mean, Nixon won pretty resoundingly in that second term for him. And then obviously a few years in, he's out the door having to resign. So you never know how a presidency is going to go at the beginning. It's certainly at the end that you can judge it as well. It's an interesting time for America because it is so divided. When the inauguration happens, there is going to be 50% of the population, or maybe a little bit more, who are delighted, elated, and relieved. And then there's 50% or so of the population who will be incredibly depressed. We saw protests over the weekend, the People's March. There they are, thousands of people taking to freezing conditions in Washington, D.C. A nation divided like never before. Does Trump have what it takes, and I mean his policies, to try and end the division?
Well, this time around, Trump has been a lot more successful in building a coalition that is, I guess, beyond his sort of immediate rusted-on followers. Let's see how long he can hold that together for. I mean, it's not just the fact that this is Trump's final term. What Trump will be very keen to do is to build a legacy, I guess, whether that is J.D. Vance for potentially another couple of... Or Barron, who knows?
Watching Barron getting onto that plane, I said verbally out loud to my partner, this looks like the beginning of the Trump dynasty here. I mean, he looks just like him. Apparently, Barron Trump was the one who came up with all of the bro chat podcasts, the going on Joe Rogan, the understanding that this is how you get to people these days, not by going on Fox News like it was in the 2016 election campaign.
Oh, certainly it seems that he has, he has some good intuition about how to communicate politically, which is not bad for a person so young. But hey, Barron is still very young, so there's plenty more water to go under the bridge here.